Hi, you're listening to the Rosenfeld Review. We're just a bunch of blind men trying to figure out that elephant. And I'm the chief blind man here, Lou Rosenfeld from Rosenfeld Media. I'm joined today by Jonathon Colman, Senior Design Manager at Intercom. Hey, Jonathon, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Lou.
Great to have you on. Although you're hearing us, I see Jonathon right now. We like to have a little video to have these conversations. And he's wearing a Detroit Tigers hat. And he reminds me of our shared Michigan roots. And meanwhile, you are very far from Michigan. You're in Dublin, right?
Yeah, in Dublin, Ireland, but I'm from the States, which is why I have this really boring accent. And it's funny because I wear this hat, out on the town, and folks have no idea what it is. Is the D for Dublin? I often get a lot of that.
There you go.
Yeah, D for Dublin.
Well, Jonathon is one of the people who's going to be speaking at the fourth DesignOps Summit happening virtually October 21st through 23rd. And I'm really interested in what you have to say because you're known as like one of the people on the planet, not to put any pressure on you when it comes to the content side of design operations. And I know there's like about 1,000 directions we could take this conversation. But I'm really interested, first of all, in what are the kind of, I don't know, I guess one question is the challenges that you're facing and that people in your role are facing when you're trying to get content to be part of an organization's design operations, or if that's even always the right approach. Do you fold content into this bigger thing, design operations, or are you seeing other organizations, for example, having content operations as standalone functions? And I got to imagine there's some sort of sort of a microcosm of what challenges writers and content people face when they're actually designers in as part of a broader design organization. How do you make sense of this?
Big question, Lou. There's a lot in there. Uh, I think each team sort of has its different sort of areas of focus, and maybe that's based on something like where are they at in their maturity. Are they, a content strategy or a content design team of one? So, they're focused on, doing all the work, executing constantly, but also trying to build out the discipline and create a space and understanding for it. Or are they a larger team like a Shopify, a Facebook, a Capital One, maybe, where there's some history, there's a massive amount of practitioners, there's some recognition for what the function does, how it works best for that matter. There's things like career paths and expectations and all of that. So I think it probably depends on size, maturity, age, things like that. For us, and perhaps due to the fact that I'm focused on a management role and I'm not doing the practice myself, I was really focused on things like hiring and recruiting, and setting clear expectations and having a path to senior and principal and things like that. So for us, those were the biggest problems to solve. For another team, though, hey, it might be content management, or it might be something like how do we do design QA? That's a challenge for many teams. Or it might be something like professional development and like what are the different kinds of career paths, or maybe what are our archetypes of content designers. So this could go in a lot of different directions.
Well, okay, so one thing that I wonder about is when we started to see design operations really come to the fore 3-4 years ago. We found, as we programmed the first conference, especially, that there was something of a divide between the establishment of design operations in settings where operations were already well known and established, like traditional environments where there may have been an operations organizations, and HR organizations long before there was a design organization or product organization.
Yeah, so
And
true.
then there's like the converse. There's the places, let's say, more recent entries into the business world, the Pinterests and the Etsy's, where design was around a lot longer before things had become operationalized. I'm wondering if there's some similar axis that you're seeing here that applies to how you establish content operations.
Yeah, it occurs to me that there's probably, many different paths to this. What stands out to me is some of the key ways I think these teams take off is the organization itself is honest. It's a learning organization, so it's able to take in new information about what's going well and what's not, and then it dedicates itself to solving that problem. Not every organization is like that, obviously, but a lot of them are. And a lot of product orgs have become really good at doing things like, regular surveys to discover what the pain points are, understanding how and when those change over time, and then dedicating themselves to figuring out, like, oh, okay, well, we're clearly hearing that X is an issue. Maybe we need a team. Maybe we just need to focus. Maybe we need to learn more. Essentially, they're talking about ops work. So I can imagine that, but I can also imagine, like a really strong individual practitioner who can think out of the everyday execution and understand just sort of like that balance between values and culture and HR and practice. And they'll have the best insight because they're really right there in the trenches on where the friction is, where the disconnects, what are the dependencies, the interdependencies of this complex system of an organization, and maybe they're the ones who spin up, something that probably starts as a skunk works, but then evolves into like, hey, this is actually valuable, a dedicated function that has recognition and gets funded. So yeah, I can imagine top down, bottoms up here.
So, well, I mean, you're probably, I know many of the listeners are familiar with Peter Merholtz and Kristen Skinner's book, Org
Hmm.
Design, Design Orgs. It's probably, if I catch your drift, way too soon to write org design for content orgs. But I know, nonetheless, you've been doing a lot of work in terms of, as you said earlier, plotting out the career progression for people doing this type of content operations work. And I'm sure it's more than that. It's the actual practitioners, as well as the people who are managing them, leading them, and creating operations to support them. Um, I don't know. It's probably too soon to say there's a pattern there, but how does it work at Intercom? What does that career path look like? Uh, and also, I think you're kind of really starting from before they've even come on board, right? You're
Oh,
looking for a
absolutely.
certain
Yeah.
type of person, and then you move them into an initial role, and then they move within the organization.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's funny that you bring up Merholtz and Skinner's book. So at least the way we practice this, we wouldn't want a content design org book. We'd want a design org book, and that's because we've specifically intentionally chosen to blur the lines between design and content design. For us, it's just design. That wasn't by mistake. That was on purpose. Because when we really thought about how we practice design and what we were asking of content designers and how we thought they made impact and were successful, and how we thought they could execute best, et cetera, um, we didn't really see a lot of distinction. And I've grown to think that a lot of the differentiation we think of between these design roles is pretty minimal. And for us, we're far more efficient once we started treating content designers like product designers and setting the same expectations for content designers as we set for product designers. For us, that's what allowed us to move the practice forward, to grow those individuals in ways that were meaningful for them, to increase their recognition, and also to pay them the same. So we pay content designers and product designers exactly the same by level and experience.
I was
Um,
just going to ask you about that.
yeah,
And
there's
the
a lot of good reasons to do that. Sorry, what?
Yeah, and then the flip side of that, of course,
Yeah.
is how you evaluate them. And I
Yeah.
wonder,
Mhm.
there's all kinds of differences in terms of how you might evaluate designers who are not content designers, of course. But I mean, are you finding that it's been pretty tricky to sort of sync up the metrics for performance across these types of roles?
Not for us. Each org works differently and probably looks for different things as success signals or metrics. But for us, the key thing was changing the way content designers work so that they work the same as product designers. And I'll go into that in a bit. We also then had to sort of codify what does content design mean to us? And in particular, what does it mean to us in relation to design? So at Intercom, product designers are, for better or for worse, what we call full stack designers, meaning that they're expected to practice and be proficient in all areas of design. And we decided that content designers should be that as well. And they shouldn't just be limited to something like UX writing or something like concept design or something like terminology. So we expect them to practice the broad array of skills associated with full stack design. And then because of that, we could hold them accountable in exactly the same ways as we do for product designers. So we look at the same metrics, we have the same definition of impact, we look for the same kinds of design practices. And if you do all those things, if they work in the same way, if they are defined in the same way, they have the same standards, and if they have the same expectations and accountability measures, then you should pay them the same. I mean, it almost goes without saying.
Well, and also
Um,
you can not only do you know what to expect from them, but they understand
mhm.
what to expect from each other.
Exactly. And to what you were saying earlier about like sometimes orgs have difficulty spinning up content ops efforts. I think there's a link there, and I think the link is that a lot of content strategy and content design teams don't explain their work, and they simply don't execute on the work in the same way that their organizations build product. And so that makes content strategy and content design seem, unaligned or uninformed or I hate to say ignorant, but certainly directed by other focal points. And I think that makes it really hard on those teams of practitioners to grow, to succeed, and to have the real world impact they're trying to have. So for us, making sure that content design was closely aligned with product design, and then making sure that all designers were deeply tied into the way we actually build product is what really helped this ops effort and the teams themselves take off.
We're talking with Jonathon Colman. We're going to take a break. You're listening to the Rosenfeld Review.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. If you want more, not only do we have a whole bunch of podcasts in our archive, but we have something that's very current, very alive, and very engaging for groups, and that is our communities. Rosenfeld Media runs a variety of communities that meet on a monthly basis for video conferences on a variety of topics near and dear to UX people, ranging from enterprise experience to advancing research to design and research operations. I want to encourage you to join one of our communities. Again, it is free by going to rosenfeldmedia.com/communities. Not only will you get a monthly video conference that you can listen in on and participate in, ask questions and so forth, we'll give you access to the recordings. And for some of those communities, we're talking about dozens of recordings with really interesting presenters and facilitators. You'll also get a newsletter. You'll get access to an advice columnist. Yes, we actually are providing advice columnists for each community. And finally, if you're interested in our conferences, our communities correspond to our conferences. So you will be the first to know when programs go live, when tickets go on sale, and by the way, most of our conferences sell out, and other good things about our conferences, such as when the scholarship applications open up. So go to rosenfeldmedia.com/communities. You're going to find something that's free, something that's interesting, and it's a great opportunity to find your tribe as well. We'll see you there.
Hi, you're listening to the Rosenfeld Review, and our guest today is Jonathon Colman, Senior Design Manager at Intercom. And I know you want to know more about Jonathon based on the first part of this interview. So before I forget, you should know that if you want to learn more about Jonathon, you should follow him on Twitter, where he is J Colman. That's JCOLMAN. Jonathon, so we were talking a lot about the way you sort of organize the content side of operations, especially at Intercom. I'm really curious, though, where you get those people. Is the pipeline singular, just like a lot of organizations just keep harvesting designers out of the same few programs, or is it pretty different with content people?
I think it's a little bit different, and I think it's because design as a practice has been around for in some ways like a close to 100 years, right? If we go back to like the foundations of graphic design. But things like interaction design, product design, web design, like we're talking about decades of life here. Whereas the content strategy piece, Christina's book is about 10 years old, I think. And if we get really specific to focus on something like UX writing, while people have been doing it for as long as there's been software, I don't think it's been sort of the practice it is in its modern form for, we're really just talking about the last 8 to 10 years or so, I'd guess. So there aren't those established schools and programs, and there's no elementary programs in this or things like that. So what I find is that a lot of people move into this field as their second or third, or in my case, fourth or fifth career. I started out in tech writing. I used to write manuals for IBM, printed ones. I wrote them in SGML. Go look it up if you haven't heard of it. It's really don't look it up. It's just painful. I have a lot of painful memories. You don't want to do that.
Here.
Don't write in SGML, kids. Anyways, that's not the point. The point is that I went from that to marketing, from there to content marketing, from there an unlikely jump to IA, from there to UX and content. So a lot of people enter the field from things like journalism, but also from unexpected things like poetry. Really what you need is not just an appreciation for language, but an appreciation for what I think of as like frameworks and concepts. If you're the kind of person who like organizes your library in a particular way, or your music, that alone isn't going to do it. You also need to be a person who really thinks deeply about language, and how it's constructed and how other people receive it. So there's a really big awareness piece as well. I find that journalists often make some of the best content strategists, content designers, UX writers, because they have that appreciation, not just of storytelling, but of structure, hierarchy, tone of voice, certainly, and credibility, most of all.
I think one of the things that is undersung about journalists, and I say this with the complete disclaimer that I am married to a former journalist, now UX writer, is an appreciation for time. Like
absolutely.
Is like really, language plus time, right? And I always find that the issue of time is just so, like, it's so hard to surface because it's around us and it's our Lord, but we and yet we don't really design around it, or think about it very much in the various types of design we do, at least not enough.
What I would actually love to see in that regard is someone who moves from comic books to product content, because those two, so they're both products. Comic books, product, but the way that they use language is so similar. I would love to see someone who's moving either in either direction, really. You have to be spare, you have to be quick, you have to get a lot across in a very small space. And I think a lot of the challenges are shared between these two mediums.
Well, I've got a book for you then.
Oh, I know you do. I've read that book. It's brilliant.
See what I mean by Kevin Chang. I'm not sure if we still have it in print, but it's a beautiful book, and I think it's way ahead of its time. And Kevin
absolutely
is, one of his first roles after writing that book was a product manager at Twitter. it was so long ago that if you want to learn more about Kevin and you get his Twitter handle, it's just K.
Early movers. They
That's
always get the
right.
benefits.
So, all right. So there's some interesting backgrounds, and it sounds like your pipelines for content people are varied, and maybe just like they have to be creative, you have to be creative in finding them in ways that you might not with some other types of designers. That said, do you find that when these content people join a team, that the existing team members, maybe they're more traditional types of designers, also have to be very creative in terms of understanding how to work with them? Because I understand that try to really, you pay them the same, you have similar metrics for their performance. It sounds like it's a very enlightened thing, but I'm sure you're still dealing with cultural baggage and professional chauvinism.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For us, it's a dedicated effort. Like there's a clear, dedicated part of our onboarding that not just covers expectations for, a content designer's role, but also for the expectations of all of their colleagues. So we do take a look at like, hey, what does a PM do here? So PM is a kind of role that it's kind of like a liquid you pour in an organization and it takes the shape of the
Well,
organization. It can do many different kinds of things, as can design for that matter too. But it's important for someone new joining our org to understand, hey, what should you expect of a PM? And we'll set that expectation based on what we expect of PMs as an organization. Same thing for design, same thing for research, same thing for engineering for that matter. And that helps us get past some of like the historical cultural baggage. So that's one way that we do. We sort of just try to level set for new folks joining the team. Um, but some of the other things is that we also, kind of have this belief that teams work best when they work in the ways that work best for them. And if you accept that, and if you accept that every individual has their own unique strengths, which we do accept, that means that that person also needs to be able to set clear expectations with their colleagues for how they work best, what they do best, how they create the most impact. And so, one of the things we do with new folks joining the team, no matter what role they're in, is to try to help them set those expectations and let them know that, like, hey, this is something people expect you to do. Is to be clear about where you can provide the most value. What kinds of problems are you best at solving? How do you work? Are you the kind of person who can, come up with a quick opinion right off the bat, or are you more like me, where I kind of got to go off and think about this? We expect people to have those conversations, and we set them up to succeed at them.
that's fantastic, and it just sounds like a very enlightened approach. Are you doing much writing about this? Because I know following you on Twitter, I'm sure you are, but where are you doing your writing? Where are you sharing your wisdom besides at the DesignOps Summit later?
Well, some of these things I will be sharing at the DesignOps Summit. But a lot of them, what we're trying to do is be transparent as a design team about what we're learning, where we're struggling, where we're succeeding as well. So one of the things that we've done is if you go to our design team site, which is intercom.design, you'll see that we're extremely open. We've shared everything from our product and content design expectations, career paths, our design process, how we work, our principles for making decisions, and even like what do we look for when we hire people. So our full interview process, the structure of each interview, and the kinds of things we look for, even in portfolios. That's all available. And the reason why we share that out is because we think it brings us better candidates, for one thing. But it also helps other organizations who might be struggling to come up with those things. It gives them a place to start. And so all of those resources are Creative Commons. We only ask that if people use them to create their own systems, which is great, they should. We only ask that they then share out their work as well. So that's how they're licensed.
That's fantastically generous. So that's intercom.design.
Yep, intercom.design.
Are there other organizations that you feel are similarly leading lights that people interested in learning more should know about?
Absolutely. One of the organizations I follow closely is Shopify. And they have a UX blog where they share all sorts of things on UX. And what I particularly like about the way that they are set up is that they take a big picture sort of view of what UX is. And so it's not just product design. There's, their content strategy, their research, even their front end development. So I definitely draw inspiration from them, particularly their design system, Polaris.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few other orgs that come to mind as well. Spotify, and I'm glad that I got my Shopify and my Spotify right. I'm going to get a second glass of wine tonight just for figuring that one out. Spotify recently talked about their system of design systems, where they've put together several different systems under one big banner, and they just sort of all work. And that was a cross-functional effort with design, content strategy, and engineering as well, which I think is pretty interesting. And then I'm biased because I used to work there, but the Facebook Design Collection on Medium is often where they talk about how they're solving hard problems, trying to do things like improve their critique or engage in new forms of research at scale. I always find that to be a really interesting read as well.
So thanks for sharing those resources. Before we wrap, I want to know if you have one more thing to share. I always like to see if there's a little project or something written or person that you want to shine a little light on for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm what you would call, I believe, a caveman in that I'd never listened to podcasts before about a year ago. And then once I finally got hooked, I would say I can't put them down, but it's more like I can't take off my headphones. So I want to share with you my current favorite podcast, and it's called Our Opinions Are Correct. And it's a podcast by Annalee Newitz, who is a science journalist who happens to write science fiction, as well as Charlie Jane Anders, who is a science fiction writer who's obsessed with science. And they cover all kinds of things, the strata of science fiction, everything from storytelling to research. I recently listened to an episode they did on world building and how to go about it. And I just think it is a fantastic podcast. So if you're into science or sci-fi, you're definitely going to find a lot to like here.
And it's called, one more time?
Our Opinions Are Correct.
That's Annalee Newitz and
Charlie Jane Anders.
Yeah, I think Annalee might have blurbed our book, Make It So, Nathan Ralph and Chris Nessel's book.
Yeah, that's a great book. I love that book.
Science fiction and its influence, TV and film, its influence on interaction design.
Mm-hmm.
This is fantastic. We could certainly go a lot longer, but I know it's Friday night for you, and you've already mentioned that second glass of wine. So.
That's right. I got to get on the first.
All right. Well, go to it. Jonathon Colman, Design Manager at Intercom. Great to talk with you today. If you're listening, you should definitely come to the DesignOps Summit, October 21st through 23rd. It is virtual, and Jonathon is one of the wonderful people who will be speaking there. We're doing a bunch of other things to make that a fantastic experience. Besides having people like Jonathon, we are going to take our second pass at attendee cohorts, a new concept that allows you to attend together so you can learn together in small groups and with the aid of a facilitator. So if you're worried about virtual conferences and Zoom fatigue in general, I think we've got you covered. We hope to see you there, and you'll get to hear Jonathon among other great speakers. Thanks again, Jonathon.
Thanks so much, Lou. Stay safe and vote.
And vote. All right. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Rosenfeld Review, brought to you by Rosenfeld Media. If you like our show, please subscribe and review it on iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast platform. I'd love it if you tell a friend to have a listen. And please check out our website for over 100 podcasts with other interesting people. You'll find them all at rosenfeldreview.com.